We're so pleased to welcome to Town Talk today Val Massard, who is the planning director for the town of Duxbury. Welcome, Val.
Hi.
Nice to have you on set. A lot of people don't know what a planning department or planning director does. What are you responsible for? So can you really give a solid outline?
Yeah, so it's not wedding planning and it's not party planning.
No?
A lot of people think of
Val,
that.
we thought you were the party planner.
So it's not event planning. What we do is talk about land use planning.
Okay.
And that can cover a lot of things. It could be water quality, it could be regulations, it could be incentives, zoning,
Yep.
subdivision control, but also things like what are we going to do long term about climate change?
Yep.
How do we improve our living situation for seniors that live in the community?
Yep.
So it covers a lot of broad topics.
Do you also get involved with the ADA compliance of like sidewalks and playgrounds and that kind of? Does that come under you too?
A little bit, like we'll work with Recreation Department or the DPW to help find grants or write plans or put design guidelines in place as part of the regulations for new construction for private development to try to address those issues. And we worked with the Senior Center to build an ADA accessible walking loop around in Duxbury. It was opened last year. And we want to give people examples of what that can look like too.
Exactly, right. Oh, so that's interesting. As a citizen, why would I go to you? What would I need to consult you on?
So there's a couple of things that I see people on a regular basis. Maybe someone's getting ready to sell a house or buy a house and they want to know a little bit more about what's happening in the area around that house.
The land area around. Okay, all the different things.
Are there new developments happening?
Yep, okay.
What can I expect to see?
Yeah, is this protected so I know nobody's going to be built behind me? That kind of thing? Yeah, okay.
Folks will come in and say, I'm thinking about subdividing my land, or there's a developer who's asked me about selling my land and I want to know more about what could happen.
Right.
My neighbor's getting ready to do something. Can I learn more about that?
Oh, okay.
And then another issue that we deal with is flood issues. So a lot of people the flood maps keep changing.
Yeah.
So that our office helps people navigate what's happening with their flood insurance.
Yeah, 'cause I was just going to say, because it dramatically affects your insurance rate.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we're responsible for sort of being that public interface.
Okay. Now, Duxbury, and correct me if I'm wrong, does not strike me as a town that has a ton of unused, unaccounted for land.
It's true. We just discovered that. We're just about built out.
Right? I mean, it's so. You recently went through Envision Duxbury, which was a 10-year. Tell me,
it's a 10-year
why don't you just
horizon.
explain what this is? Yeah.
Yeah. So for the last 2.5 years or so, we've worked really closely with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, which is our regional planning agency, and they took the lead in helping us design this comprehensive plan.
Yep.
We worked with all of the different committees and boards to get their input and say to ourselves, what's our vision for the next 10 years together as a community? And we hadn't done that for about 20 years. So it was good to refresh everybody and think about
new master plan.
Yeah.
And what were some of the big takeaways that came out of that Envision Duxbury plan?
Well, it was a surprise to the community to learn that the community had changed its mind since the last time the study was done, and they wanted more. They want more walkability in town. So that's a big change.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then also the adding on of the idea of sustainability and climate resiliency. It's kind of new topics for planners in the last decade or so. So we've done that too.
Now, would you be involved if someone wanted to put in a solar field or a wind turbine? Would that come under you?
Well, there's zoning that we've crafted through me also working with the building department and trying to figure out what language would work. And then the planning board itself actually recommends to town meeting changes like that would occur.
Okay.
So once the zoning's in place, then folks who need a permit would go through the building department or perhaps the planning board for permits.
Okay. Have you looked at any of those sustainable energy avenues in town at all?
Well, we became a green community 2 years ago.
And what does that mean?
So
to anyone who doesn't know, what does that mean?
So we committed ourselves to an energy reduction plan to reduce the carbon footprint so that we're polluting less. And we're saving money by just like anybody would do if they put in LED light bulbs. Think of the town doing that for all of its operations.
That's huge.
We were doing that already, but now we're doing it in line with what the state wants so that we can get grant money.
Sure.
So we've been excited to get
help with that
2
process.
grants so far
Yeah.
from the state to help
Yeah.
us with that.
Okay. Now, back to the point that there's not a lot of extra land there in Duxbury that isn't accounted for.
Yeah. What on earth would a planner have to do?
Well, really, so I guess really the big thing comes to what do you have to do?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have a lot of commercial development,
Right.
clearly, in the town. Most of your town is either owned by the town or privately owned.
Yep.
So what strategies can you put in place to make any changes going forward?
Yeah, so what we found is that over the years, even though we've had a lot of, I think we're 90% residential.
Yeah.
At least.
You're way up there.
Right.
Yeah,
And
way up there.
There's a lot of these business districts that are really heavily used, but they haven't had a lot of TLC over the years,
Right.
and they're not as cohesive as they could be.
And they're quaint.
Right, they're
Yeah,
very quaint.
they're very
That's
quaint,
the word,
right,
and
yeah.
Duxbury loves that about its
Exactly.
business districts.
Yeah.
We have a few issues that are on the horizon. Snug Harbor is threatened by sea level rise.
Right.
And it's having some issues with storm events now.
Yep.
So we've been doing some planning outreach with the community to talk about what are our options there.
Yep.
And we're doing an infrastructure study right now to really map out when will sea level rise
Yep.
be a damaging thing to the different infrastructures that we have on the coast.
Yeah.
And that's important so that we can plan ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Yeah.
that's like a 10, 15-year plan you got to start on now.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, because
Have you done the municipal vulnerability preparedness study?
we did do that,
Yeah.
and we did it early on in 2017.
Oh, so you were ahead of the curve.
We were really fortunate to
Right.
be able to do that, and we have the grant from that program is helping us do this study on the infrastructure.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, so we're modeling exactly what will happen on the known sea level rise
Yep.
horizons in 10 years and
Yep.
50 years from there to help us as land use managers figure out what's going to be the first thing that we need to
Right.
pay attention to.
Right. And do you also get involved in disaster mitigation or
Yeah, my
planning
job,
for that?
Yeah, planning is the idea is to try to reduce the impacts of the storms
That you
when
do
they-
have, that you're going to have.
before-
'cause
Yeah,
you know you're going to have
I do
them.
what I
Yeah.
can before they get there.
Right.
And then once they're here, that's more of the emergency services side.
Okay, but you must work hand in glove with them too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's not a lot of departments that you don't probably interact with
correct.
because
right.
everything that happens on land, right?
That's right.
Or the water.
And even on the water, we're working with the harbor master with some of these questions.
Yeah.
Because it affects the channel and affects the water quality, the
Yep.
oyster industry,
Yep.
access to the water. The other thing we're looking at is walkability throughout the town.
Now, can you talk about what is that? How would you define walkability?
Right. So I'd like to be able to walk to, say, Town Hall.
Yep.
Hall's Corner is not too far from Town Hall.
No, it isn't.
And a lot of people do walk down there for lunch and so
Yeah.
forth, but there's no sidewalk.
Right.
So people feel a little bit unsafe on some of our larger streets
Sure.
because sidewalks were not a high priority for the town
Right.
in the past. But walkability's come up because we've
absolutely.
had some
And bikeability.
bikeability, right?
Right.
So, and that was, like I said, that was a siren call in our comprehensive plan. So,
And once you start down that road of okay, we're going to put in sidewalks, it's not just putting in sidewalks.
right,
Then it affects every road and drainage and, right?
yeah,
It's-
and we're hoping to maybe look at easements and not focus on sidewalks for sure. You know,
Yep.
we want to keep the idea of walkability
Right.
out there. It may not be a curbed concrete sidewalk. It might be a paved trail like we did at the senior center.
Yeah.
That connects people from one place to another.
Not necessarily parallel with the road.
Not necessarily,
yeah, so
right.
think outside the box.
That's exactly what we're
Yeah.
trying to do.
Yeah.
Because we do have limited, narrow roadways, and there might be some situations where an easement's going to be a lot better option for us.
Right.
So we're going to start looking at that as a community through the planning board right after town meeting, starting in April.
Okay. Now, this piece of land that you're looking to purchase in your second special town meeting on Monday night,
Right.
talk a little bit about that because that's a really interesting parcel. It has an old-fashioned house on it,
Right.
correct? So that's historic. And then it has some agricultural type
Yeah. well,
land.
so I'm not too heavily engaged in that, but right, there's a very old house and some structures that are with it, and then it's surrounded by some fields and some forest land.
Yep.
So it's got a very rustic appeal.
Sure.
And the town has, for a long time, been trying to acquire that
Yeah.
as open space.
Sure.
And unfortunately, they had never reached an agreement on a price.
Okay.
And recently, one of the folks who was in control of that property passed away, and it went on the market. And now there's a goal of the residents around that property would be to try to still acquire it because it was under chapter protection,
Yes.
Chapter 61.
Yep. Okay.
So the idea is the town has the right of first refusal.
Right.
We're struggling as a community, as a town, to come up with funding to do that, but we can create the opportunity to hand that opportunity to buy off to a designated agent that might have the funding. So we're hoping that that might happen. And
Okay.
in the meantime, there's been a lot of debate back and forth
Sure.
with the developer about the price.
Yep. And the last thing I want to ask you is, let's say I owned 20 acres in Duxbury. It's been in my family forever. And I want to sell it. And somebody comes in and offers me, you know, $20 million for the land, but they want to put up, you know, a 50 house
Yeah, big.
neighborhood.
Big
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would have to be first go through the planning department, right? Even if is it feasible?
Well, yeah, there's a couple things I would say. One is Duxbury really is has focused for decades on its water quality.
Yep.
And acquiring land to protect its water quality.
Okay.
So a big property like that,
Would
and
affect it.
for
Yep.
Duxbury, that's big.
Yep.
We'd be interested in thinking about whether or not it's something we'd want to acquire using grant money or other
Okay.
funds that we might have available.
Okay.
If there was an opportunity to reach a price agreement
Yeah.
or some sort of way to protect that land that
Yeah.
would also be a win-win for the homeowner,
Sure.
we'd want to explore that.
Right.
We'd
Because
wanna-
everything's really connected, and a lot of it does start
Yeah.
with water at this point. A lot
Sure
of towns
does. Yeah.
say that first. When you talk about affordable housing and stuff, they say, well, we have to have the water to have the infrastructure.
Yeah, and that's another thing we
Yeah.
need is affordable housing. So we're always looking for
Sure.
properties that are suitable for that.
Sure.
We're looking at one right now where there might be a combination of conservation and affordable housing. So we'd want to explore those options. And then, of course, we would say, well, if those options don't work out or if you're not interested
Yeah.
because it's not my land, it's
Right,
yours,
right.
then, of course, we would talk about what options there are in
Right.
terms of development. And
Okay. And what is your biggest challenge that you face, and you just it's a tough one? What's the thing that you find the hardest in your job?
probably the hardest is getting people interested in planning topics. You know, they're so broad.
Call me.
Yeah.
Let's chat about planning.
And that's why we started some senior center hours.
Yeah.
Our senior center in Duxbury pretty much acts like a community center.
Oh, it is. It's
And it's a wonderful
wonderful.
place.
It's
There's so
wonderful.
much going on.
Yes.
So in talking with Joanne Moore, who
Yep.
runs the place,
Yeah.
she's saying, you know, why don't you come on over? You know, so
Yeah.
Monday mornings from 9:30 to 11:30 over a cup of coffee,
Yep.
I'm available to talk to people about whatever questions they might have.
Yeah.
And, you know, this Monday I was busy, 3 different visitors, and I'm hoping to have more.
That's
You know,
great.
Plenty of parking.
Yeah,
You can get
yeah.
coffee.
Low stress.
Low stress.
Low stress, yeah.
You can go see your
Come see
friends.
me. Okay, all right.
And it's, you know, no stairs.
Okay.
And there's so many different topics people might be interested in.
Yeah.
They all sort of weave together.
Yes. Oh, they do. Everything's connected.
Yeah.
Everything's
So
connected.
We're trying to be approachable
Yep.
and not just be that face that shows up when there's a development,
Right.
because that can really become adversarial. Neighbors
absolutely.
are upset. People
Yeah.
are tense.
Yeah, they don't know that all the other
Yeah.
things that happen.
There's so many
all
other
during-
things we
right,
can talk
right.
about.
Which you're great, and you're smart to do that. That's good. All right, so we've had the pleasure of having Val Massard, who is the planning director for the town of Duxbury, here on Town Talk. Thank you so much,
Thank you very much for having me.
and we'll see you next time.